Welcome to Catacris Magazine. We can be found on the web at www.catacris.com. We're speaking to my good friend John Erigo, who many people know as a lead singer of the Dead End Kidz. The band's been quite inactive for several years, John, but your fan base is just as huge as ever. So talk a little bit about how you've kept that going all these years, because you're the one guy that kind of keeps it going.
Well, first of all, Happy New Year.
Yeah, you too, buddy.
To you and everybody
out there
listening.
Yeah,
How's it going? The Dead End Kidz is kind of weird. It just keeps going with a life of its own. I do when I can. Not really. Well, I guess you'd call it promoting.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Yeah.
Still trying to, maybe score some kind of licensing deals, for like movies and commercials or stuff, or just still the music is out there, and it's kind of hard to explain. It's really pretty cool. It
amazes me because there are bands that were a lot bigger that do not seem to have the loyal fan base, and I just you gotta love those fans for keeping it going. All these years, there must be something to the music, and that's being that you're the voice behind the band. That's got to be a great feeling.
Yeah, it really is. When we were creating the music, it was the era of grunge. Really, our timing couldn't have been worse.
Yeah.
With the kind of music we were making, but I have it like on my phone and like my iTunes, because the music is on iTunes, or Apple Music, whatever it's called now.
Yeah.
And I play it on shuffle, when I'm driving to work and stuff. And a song every once in a while, a song will come mixed in between everything else. And when I hear it, first of all, it's really weird listening to yourself, no matter how long you've been doing it. But not that it was intentional, but it was. I was happy, that the music was kind of like. How can I explain it? No, like real specific genre to it. It's not to be, like pat myself on the back or us on the back or anything, but it's almost kind of timeless. It's like, because it's just like straight ahead loud rock and roll. So it's not like dated. It's not like, like an 80s sound, or like the thrash metal in the 90s kind of sound, or there's no specific like really except it's rock and roll. That's basically what it is. It's blues with balls.
Yeah, that's a good way to describe it.
It's really cool because I think it's a testament to me and the guys, Tom Mahalko, Kevin Udell, Scott Carlson, and Mike LaBianco. The stuff that we created. Because no one person really did a bulk of the writing. It was like all of us throwing ideas together. Very rare did somebody come and say, "Hey, here's a song. Here's how we're going to play it." It wasn't like that.
You're probably right about that, because a lot of times, and even some of the most successful bands, it's typically one or two guys that write the stuff, and so a lot of times it does sound the same. I mean, growing up, I remember being a Motley Crue fan and being kind of surprised to find out, because when you're younger, you don't always read the, songwriting credits, who wrote the song, but come to find out, oh no, Vince Neil, he's just the guy that sings the song. Nicky and Mick, they write all the songs,
Yeah, it was like that with Skid Row, too. Sebastian really didn't write much, but then you have a guy like, I like to use the example of Blackie Lawless, because, a lot of guys that play and sing and out of the main songwriters kind of get stuck in kind of like, I don't know what the right word to say it nicely is.
Yeah.
It's kind of like they can only play and sing the same kind of thing at the same time, So it's like not like where you have like a guitarist writing the music and somebody else writing the lyrics and singing it, because a lot of times it's hard for somebody to play something different than what they're singing. There are guys out there like Lips from Anvil, one of my favorite bands. He does it great. And now he's Anvil's been a 3-piece for a long time, and a guy who's unfortunately we just celebrated the morning of his passing for the 36th year, I think, Phil Lynott from Thin Lizzy. A lot of people don't realize if you watch those old videos of Thin Lizzy playing live, what Phil was playing, and not even really looking at his hands, and singing a complete different melody than what he's playing.
Wow.
It's mind-boggling. You know, it's almost like watching these really amazing drummers who, like, all four appendages are doing something completely independent of the other, and it's like, how does your brain do that? You know, it takes so much practice to get to be able to do that. You know.
Yeah.
So it's there's a
I was gonna say another guy that I was kind of admired is Geddy Lee. I mean, look what the guy is the lead singer, plays the bass. You got to remember, the vocals to the songs, playing keyboards all at the same time.
A lot of these guys you watch. Even the guy who plays more basic stuff, a guy like Danko Jones. I don't know if you're familiar with him.
Yeah.
He's the only guitar player because he's the namesake of the band, and he's playing and singing, and he's totally different. Like what he's singing and what he's playing, and he barely even looks down. It's like astonishing how they can do that. It's really a gift. James Hetfield, my God, from Metallica.
Oh yeah.
Megadeth, Dave Mustaine. Some of the stuff these guys play while they're singing is just it's really. I think people take that kind of stuff for granted.
Yeah, and I've heard Dave Mustaine talk about his own story, which is of course, had he never been fired from Metallica, he may never became a lead singer because he didn't really think of himself much as a lead singer. And then when he went to form Megadeth, his original plan was to have somebody else sing the songs, but he was saying he just could not find a vocalist to kind of sing his songs the way he envisioned them or heard them in his head. And his manager, somebody told him, "Hey Dave, why don't you just take a shot at singing the songs?" And I thought, you know what, you're a pretty good singer, just do it yourself.
There you go.
Yeah.
A lot of guys don't want to deal with what's called LSD.
Yeah, lead singer.
You know what that is?
Lead singer disease.
There you go. Thank God for me, the guys in the Dead End Kids put up with me. So.
It seemed to work for everybody. Now, you're of course, as many people know, you're a big Kiss fan like me, and so today what we're going to talk about, John, mainly is this last November 17th. That just passed was the 40th anniversary of Kiss's Music from the Elder, which if you're at all a Kiss fan or any kind of rock fan, that's kind of an interesting album for Kiss. It's first of all, it's their least, it's one album sells the least. It's their least popular, and yet fans are either really, really love it or they really, really hate it. I mean, when that album was first released, I mean, what are your memories of you checking it out for the first time?
I have a very vivid memory of that because the first time I heard the album, there's a little bit of a story behind it.
Let's hear it.
So the album came out, I don't remember the exact date.
November 17th, 1981. I looked that up. Yeah.
Well, okay. Back then, the albums came out on Fridays.
Yeah.
They still pretty much do now. And again, this is going way. You got to remember what year this was. Early, was it 1981?
That's when it originally was released. Yeah.
Yeah. So you couldn't download it on your phone the second it came out.
Yeah.
It was a little different.
Had to go to a record store.
The local record store where I bought my stuff didn't have the album the day it came out, if I remember correctly. It might have took a couple of days for it to get there. And I was obviously, kind of friendly with the guy because I bought a lot of stuff at the same store in the local town, Baldwin, New York, where I grew up. And so that night that he was supposed to get the album, I had tickets to see the great band from Canada, Triumph.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And, I had to get to the show, and the guy didn't have the album yet, but he said he was getting it that night, around 7, 8 o'clock or whatever. So I remember this. I begged my dad. I'm like, look, I'll give you the money. If you could do me this favor, go pick up the album, while me and my brother Joe go to the concert. Wow. And he was like, yeah, no problem, So I go to the show. It was a great show. Triumph was always great.
Yeah.
They were always a great live band. So I was all pumped up. I get home. I go downstairs in the basement to my stereo, and sitting on the turntable was The Elder. So I'm like, oh, wow, this is cool. Before I go to bed, I can check this out. So, I'm one of those people who, was into the band, before that. I got into the band when Destroyer came out. So the two albums prior to The Elder were really disappointing. Dynasty and then Unmasked was even worse. It was like, they can't do 3 bad albums in a row to me. I'm like, what's going on? Yeah. So I put the album on, and the first chords
Yeah.
And then I'm listening and I'm like, okay, lyrics are a little weird. This doesn't sound like Kiss. The guy's not talking about, chicks and stuff. So what the hell's going on here? So, but I was still happy that it sounded heavy. And then the beginning of Just a Boy came on, and I took the album cover and threw it across the room. I threw my hands, and you're like, what the hell is this? So I was just I didn't know what to think at first. It really, really was such a left turn from everything. And
different is the word.
They had already done 2 left turns albums before that, and now a third one. I'm like, what's going on? So yeah, that's my recollection of the first listen was like happiness and shock.
Yeah. And we should also mention the fact, okay, as you mentioned, this album, like Destroyer, was produced by the legendary Bob Ezrin, that not only previously to this produced Destroyer, but all those Alice Cooper albums. And in fact, he's still producing Alice's new stuff, the latest album, Detroit Stories, which was one of the finest albums. And so I would dare say, out of everything Ezrin's ever done, this is probably his one major flop. Because it's so different sounding, and apparently it has a lot to do with, I've heard Ezrin talk over the years, as well as Paul and Gene, that he was very messed up on drugs, and they got this, and him and Gene in particular got this, hey, let's make a concept album. And I think part of the reason for that is because in 1980, 1 year before this album came out, he had just produced Pink Floyd's album, The Wall. And I think they thought, okay, well, let's do our version of The Wall,
Well, it's funny because I don't want to get any Kiss fans
No, this is just our opinion.
It's like I just saw an interview recently with Gene and Paul. I can't remember what it was for.
Yeah.
It was something online, but it was a video, the two of them and the guy podcast or whatever. And this was specifically about The Elder and what their recollections of it were. And I mean, to this day, they still don't like that album, And you go online and somebody posts, recently they unearthed the Eye video that
I've seen
never
that.
really came out.
Yeah.
And somebody had screwed around with it and fixed it. Because there was versions of it rolling around the internet that were terrible.
Yeah.
And somebody cleaned it up somehow and got a better version. And, all right, you post it, and then you get all these Kiss fans, oh, my God, this is my favorite album. And I'm, shaking my head. I'm like, really? And it's almost like these people get off on, oh, I have to like the obscure Kiss stuff to be the uber fan. Or, if you were alive and old enough when that album came out to realize what it almost did to the band, no matter what you hear, you would still not like the album because it really came close to breaking them up. It almost bankrupted them. Again, it was the third album in a row. You're going to listen to a song like, Under the Rose, which is okay, and you're going to tell me that's the same band that made Deuce and Strutter and Parasite and, Got the Choose, and it's totally different stuff, and it was the album that, they had already lost so many people from the two before, that this album made the rest of the people leave too. It was down to almost all the original fan base just bailed on them after this. And, they were trying so desperate to do something different.
Yeah.
And all they had to do was do what they do.
Yeah.
I always say that Kiss is best when it's at its heaviest. You look at the fans talk about their favorite albums, it's always the fair weather fan's going to say, oh, Destroyer, but if you go back and you talk to the real Kiss fans that are long time from before the makeup came off, and it's always oh man, Revenge, Creatures, Lick It Up, those are the albums, aside from the original stuff, and those are the heaviest albums.
Yeah, but here's the thing too, John, is okay, I think Revenge, even if you look at that album, it is a much better album than music from Elder. It's almost that was kind of Ezrin's chance to kind of get it right one more time with Kiss, and he did. But after, I kind of wondered, after they had the success with that, why was the decision to not let's get Ezrin again and let's do a follow up? very much along those lines. Why then do they go and do what eventually becomes Carnival Souls, the grunge album? Very much to your point,
Well, Carnival Souls was an album that was never really supposed to come out. It was just a bunch of demos, and because the fans, started trading it, that's when all that kind of had kicked in around that time with, being able to download stuff. They saw dollar signs in front of their faces and said, well, people are going to, try and get crappy copy of it. Why don't we just put it out? So it really was never supposed to. It's really not even a finished album.
Yeah, because originally, what happened is that was going to be the follow-up to Revenge, actually. And then when they decide, okay, we're going to do the reunion tour instead and get Ace and Peter back, they kind of actually put the album on hold and like, let's wait and see what happens. And so, number one, the album gets released 5 years after it's originally recorded. It's supposed to come out. And then by that point, the record deal, company, they don't really heavily promote it. I mean, they were featured in Metal Edge magazine, and then look at the kind of the artwork for the album cover. It wasn't really, they didn't spend a lot of money on that either. You could kind of tell. So the album comes out, but I'm talking about Carnival Souls, but it doesn't really get the push that maybe it should have.
Yeah, to be honest with you, I like that album because first of all, it's raw.
Yeah.
I always tend to go for that raw kind of sound. I thought Paul's voice is absolutely
incredible. Paul's songs were actually a lot more heavier.
Yeah.
Even
I love a song like Rain. That was a great song. And Gene's Hate, which is a song that I always would have loved to see them, doing the makeup. I thought that was a cool demon song.
I love Seduction of the Innocent. Child
Yeah, I mean, they had a semi-radio hit with Jungle. I think did pretty good. So it wasn't. It's not one of my favorites, but I don't hate it.
Yeah.
These three albums from the band, like we're talking about, the Dynasty, Unmasked, and the Elder, I call the trilogy of crap, because I just didn't really like much from those three albums at all, and I didn't like the changes, and I tend to lean more towards the first 6 studio albums as my favorite.
Of course, yeah. And
these three just almost killed the band, so I had a real sour taste in my mouth when I think about people how much they love the albums. It's like, it's all right, cool if you like the music, but keep in mind too what was going on back then.
Oh yeah, I mean, even if you look, now let me ask you, John, because of course we only know what we're told. Back in the day, and I know as a kid, a lot of his stuff, did not come out for years. Like the fact that, probably like a lot of people, when you bought the album, you thought on Dynasty and Unmasked, oh yeah, Peter's on the cover, he's playing all the drums on the album, and we find out years later, it's Anton Fig. But so my question there is years later, being a musician yourself, John, having played in a band, if you go back and you listen to those albums, can you kind of now tell, that's some other drummer. It's not really, that sounds nothing like Peter Criss, or did you kind of pick up on it?
I remember when the albums came out, not so much Dynasty, because Dynasty was kind of more like a lot of 4/4, straight kind of drumming for the most part. But I remember listening to Torpedo Girl on
Unmasked,
and it's like, that doesn't sound like Peter.
Yeah.
That sounds there's too much going on. It doesn't even sound like Ace, like Gene playing bass. I actually think it's Ace on that song. And then, as far back as Rocket Ride, you listen to the last 6 seconds of Rocket Ride, and it's like, that's not Peter Criss,
Yeah.
So and the whole thing with Dynasty was, Peter had broken his wrist or his arm, but he was actually recording his solo album at the same time Kidz was recording Dynasty. So, you find all the stuff out years later, you're like, wow, really? And then when you really get into it, to be honest, from what I've read and been told, and little things come out over the years, it seems like the first 3 Kidz studio albums are the only albums that all 4 of them play on all the songs.
Yeah, because
after that, who knows?
Even on Destroyer, I think it was on Sweet Pain and a few other tracks, Ace didn't show up to do his parts, so they got Dick Wagner from the Alice Cooper Band to come in and do his parts. So
Yeah, there's a great story. It's Bob Kulick, I think, played on one of those Destroyer songs too. I don't remember if it was Destroyer. I can't remember what album. I think it was Destroyer. Where Bob Kulick, rest in peace to him. Told a story where like Ace was passed out drunk.
Yeah, I heard that. Yeah.
That's another thing. Ace used to record a lot of the solos that he actually played on his back because he couldn't stand up. That's what I remember hearing about that story. But Bob Kulick told the story once that like they brought him in and Ace was just like passed out.
Like, good job, Bob.
Kulick went in. Bob Kulick went in and cut the solo and walked out as Ace was like waking up, and Ace was like, "How did I do?" And Bob Kulick's like, "You never sounded better."
Yeah. But But back then, even going all the way back to Dynasty, I mean, Kiss was such a machine that they wanted the fans to have that illusion that they were all the best of friends and stuff. But I've even come across. I mean, they didn't want to let it out that no, Peter's not playing on the album. They protected that image for years, up until they could no longer, dude. I even came across speaking of Peter's first post Kiss solo, Out of Control. There's a song on the what is it? But there's one of his songs on there that actually Kiss recorded for Dynasty. I guess it was one of his demo tracks that he decided to keep for the solo album. So
I think they were just trying to keep the peace at one point with after the band started getting all the money and things started blowing up. They wanted to, because it was always Gene and Paul against Ace and Peter kind of with the songwriting too, and they would throw them. That's how Vinnie Poncia got introduced to the band. For those albums, and Peter Criss didn't even play on them.
Yeah, in fact, I think.
Figure that one out.
Well, in fact, I think that's what I heard the guys talk about in interviews, that it was Vinnie Poncia that actually said, Peter's not playing up to snuff. So we got to, they were like, we got Peter's drummer here to, his producer to try to, make him happy, and even his producer doesn't want to work with him. And actually, I think the song I was talking about, There's Nothing Better. I've heard a version of a Kiss demo where that was originally recorded for Dynasty, if you can believe that.
It wasn't so much that Peter wasn't a good enough drummer.
Yeah.
I mean, he was more than adequate. It's just that he was abusing. At that point, he was using drugs, and it definitely. I mean, like, I heard stories of when they were recording Love Gun that Eddie Kramer that did that album?
Yeah.
Yeah, he actually stood in the recording studio with a rolled up newspaper and had to kind of hit Peter's drum throne, which is the seat they call the throne, like to help keep him in time while he was recording. Instead of a click track. I guess they didn't have a click track where they were or whatever. That's crazy. And then even on the Elder, I forgot. Is it I think the song Eric Carr didn't play on it. They brought
in fact, that's another point I was going to bring up. That Eric joins the band in time, 1980 in time to go on the Unmasked tour, okay, and then so he's out there touring with the band, but he doesn't even play on that album. And his first album is Music from Elder, comes out a year later, and even on that. He's not playing all the drum tracks. If you read the credits, and that's kind of, and here he's joining this major hard rock band, or what he thinks is hard rock, and then first thing he gets to play on is the Elder, and I dare say that talking about your reading online, what people respond to the new version of the I video. I think part of the reason is, to me, out of all these songs, that was one track I was kind of immediate drawn to, because that's kind of the most Kiss-like, and I thought, I couldn't believe it they didn't at least release that as a single back then. I'm thinking, that's kind of the most Kiss-like track on there. It's to me, it's a great rock anthem, and I can't believe more people didn't take notice of it back in the day.
Yeah, they wanted I to be like Rock and Roll Night Part 2. Gene said that in interviews, and when they were promoting the album, that was one of the songs that they would lip sync to on TV or when they played like on Fridays. It was the last song they played when they played the only live stuff we have from that.
Yeah, and see, that's the other thing. I mean, this was such an unpopular album.
I is like, do I like the Elder? No, but there are moments on it that I do like, and actually, sonically, it's really good. It sounds good. It sounds, like I said, The Oath. That song sounds heavy. It's just that it gets kind of lost with the lyrics and then the falsetto vocals in it. The Ace stuff is pretty cool. Dark Light and Escape from the Island are pretty cool.
Yeah.
And I is the song. I is the only song that if they were playing live, yeah, play that. That would be cool live. And yeah, I think if that video would have came out, it might have did a little bit.
Yeah.
I don't think it would have. I don't think it would have changed the course of the album that much. It's a good song though, and people again that were fans like it when Gene and Paul split the vocals,
Yeah.
so that was kind of cool on that song too. Made it a little, unique for its time because they hadn't done that. They kind of lost their way in that. So that was cool.
See, that's why, like when Revenge came out, that's one thing I loved about that album. They went back to kind of co-writing and co-singing on, co-singing on the songs, and and that's kind of what they said when Revenge came out. Is they said, we kind of lost our way. We just each started writing our own tracks and doing our own tracks on our own, and it was less about being a band. But like, here's the other thing. I mean, originally when it was released, it was very important that they wanted the track listing had to be in a certain order because originally, remember this is a concept album, and originally their ultimate plan was, okay, this is a concept album, we're gonna make a movie to go along with it. Movie never materialized or ever was even filmed, but that was the original plan, and so they wanted the track listing had to be in a certain order. But since the movie never materialized or anything, and the album was such a poor seller, they decided, okay, we're gonna just move on. This is, in fact, the only studio album they never really toured behind. Which it says it all, right there.
Mm-hmm. The weird thing about the album is that, and again, this is gonna sound so strange, but it was, when that album came out, there was really CDs weren't really prominent,
Yeah.
And not that long after it came out, I went to the very first, they called it the New York Kiss Convention, who was actually in New Jersey.
Okay.
And somebody was selling, they had one copy of Killers and one copy of The Elder on CD from Japan.
Wow.
This is like way back, like 1983 maybe even. Only a couple of years after the album came out. I can't really remember what year it was, but Ace was playing solo, so it might have been a little later. And anyway, when I got that, and I was in there so early, I was the one that bought both of them. The guy only had one copy of each, so. And when the album track order list is different on the Japanese version, it's in the actual order it was supposed to be in.
Yeah.
On the American release, because the album is supposed to tell a story, and if you listen to the Japanese version, it has different sound effects and stuff, little like tidbit things in between the songs to make the tracks almost run together like a soundtrack. And the songs are in a different order, it tells the story better.
Yeah.
For some reason, when they released it in America, they didn't like that certain songs were lumped together. They thought it was like a lull in the album, so they changed it for the American release.
Yeah, from what I
can tell you that much.
From what I understand, like I said, originally it was supposed to be a movie, and they never made a movie or anything. So the record company had the bright idea, okay, we're going to kind of change the order of a track listing so it'll maybe flow a little better. I don't think it really makes that big of a difference. But probably other probably track I like, I'd say the most on here would be Dark Light, which of course is the Ace tune. I've heard another song like. We got a lot of these unreleased Elder demos, and there's been talk of releasing some of that. I think that would be cool just to come out, have some extra stuff, for the fans. But I've heard another demo track called "Don't Run." It's the same song, just like different lyrics, same music though, and everything.
Yeah, right.
And
you're talking about changing the album, the track list, so you can polish a turd, but it's still a turd.
Yeah.
There's really not much you could do to make that album, better.
They've tried.
I guess you could say. And don't forget too, this is the 40th anniversary this year of Packages of the Night, so let's see if they pull anything off of that. I have a feeling they will.
I do too.
Kiss likes those anniversary bundle packages and stuff, so see what they come up with for that. But it would be cool, you know, because a lot of the songs, you know, even from, there were some songs on Unmasked. I don't know if you've ever heard, like, there's a demo version floating around of, I'm trying to remember, it was one of the songs Gene did. I think it's You're All That I Want.
Yeah.
And the demo version, it sounds like almost like a different song. It's like a lot rawer and heavier.
Yeah.
And you know, it would be cool because you know they have this stuff. They got. I mean, if we can get it, you know, they got to have it somewhere. It would be cool if they would release all the, you know, these demo. I mean, like, you know, it's time for another box set. It's time for another Kissology. We're definitely overdue for something like that, you know.
Yeah.
Who knows? You know, maybe they'll do stuff. You know, now that they're winding down, and if they're not putting out new music, they might as well put out, you know, unreleased old music. I think that would be awesome.
They got a ton of, like you said. I mean, you can find this stuff on YouTube and online. Ton of tracks you've heard them talk about over years, stuff we have never even heard them talk about that you come across. And it's like, man, how is it that this track never was released? And like you said, and I've heard they've got talk about the Elder. They've got so much unreleased stuff from the Elder that people say a lot of unreleased stuff is better than what wound up on the album. And if for no other reason, I think that's a cool reason to put that stuff out there. You know.
I couldn't agree more. You know, I remember hearing a song, and I'm pretty sure it was for the Elder. It's called something like Thunder in Your Heart or Thunder in My Heart.
Yeah, I think that's a Paul tuner, yeah.
And I'm listening to this song, like, why didn't they release this, you know?
Yeah.
And I mean, there's tons of stuff, you know, that you know, it would be cool to get a definitive kind of, you
official release, yeah.
Like unreleased box set kind of, because they've so much stuff that they've been holding back. You know, even live stuff, you know, rare songs. And, you know, like, I mean, like, when they first started touring for Creatures, I know they played Keep Me Coming and Rock and Roll Hell on some of the earlier shows. And Kiss is famous for doing that, which is why I always like seeing them when the tour started. Because in the first, like, week or two, they would play smaller towns, and they would play, you know, different songs and test them out. And they said, well, if it doesn't work, we're in, you know, the middle of wherever. You know, it's not like we're playing New York or L.A., so let's try and, you know, there was no bootlegging really back then like there is today. Like, Corey's going to be on YouTube the next day. Like, I remember, I'll give you an example, Animalize. When Animalize came out, I went to the very first show of the U.S. tour, and they played I've Had Enough.
Wow.
Which they were playing in Europe before they did Europe before they did America. They were playing it over there. And they played it the first night of the U.S. tour was at the Stabler Arena in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. You know, it's only like a 7,000 seat, you know, place. It wasn't like a big, huge arena. And I'll never forget the look on Paul's face when he was trying to do the chorus and he couldn't hit the notes and he was turning his head and spitting and trying to clear his throat. And he just looked frustrated. And they didn't play the song again on the tour or ever, you know. So it's like, oh, okay, I saw something special.
I remember when that album came out. That's one of the 3 songs they were kind of pushing off that album. You know, I've Had Enough, Heaven's on Fire, and Thrills in the Night. Let me ask. Talking about seeing them on the Animalize tour. When you went to that show, you know, you buy the album, and Mark St. John's the guy that played on the album. But did you have any idea that it was Bruce Kulick playing at that?
Yeah, word had gotten around that there was something not right with Mark at that point.
Yeah.
And you know, it was kind of like I was. Oh boy, how can I say this without getting in trouble? I kind of had an informant.
Okay, that's enough.
I had somebody who was close to somebody who was close to somebody in the band, you know, one of those kind of things. But it was legit. It wasn't like, oh, my friend's brother's uncle's boyfriend, you know, some crazy like that. You know, this is like a friend of a friend that knew somebody in the band.
Wow, yeah.
And so I got news. I got news like that. Like, and again, this is really before the cell phones and stuff. I got an old school word of mouth, you know, through the phone.
Okay,
like we're doing now. And so I knew, you know, I knew far in advance what was going on, and it was kind of like puzzling, you know. It was almost like, we almost thought to one point where it was like kind of like a cover up because the guy sucked on stage. You know, he could play, but he had no charisma.
Yeah,
That's what we thought. You know.
Yeah.
So it's sad what happened to that guy. Because I mean, you listen to Animalize. I mean, he was a really good guitar player. So.
Yeah, and it's kind
I
of.
know a lot of people don't think he was right for Kiss because he was more like a neoclassical, you know, Yngwie kind of, almost like Shredder. But it made the songs interesting, that's for sure.
And even Paul Stanley has kind of gone on record as saying that. But you know, you're the one that picked him. You know, that's what they wanted at that time. And which the reason I asked that about if you knew it was a different guitar player when you went to the show is because I've heard people over years talk about. You know, it took a while during the Animalize tour to kind of merchandise and everything to get caught up, but because people would go to the show and Mark St. John's, you know, in the tour book, he's on the album, he's on the T-shirt and the posters, and then people look at the guy on stage. Is that him? Well, he looks a little different, you know, on the poster than the guy up there, but maybe it is the same. And so there was that confusion for a while.
Well, there are still people that think that Ace and Peter are in the band and it's Tommy and Eric.
Yeah.
You know, some people just don't know or don't care, you know?
Yeah. Now, how do you feel about that, John, as far as, you know, like Tommy and Eric wearing the makeup? Personally, I mean, I think they should have their own character, but I don't feel like, you know, they're ripping any, but it'd be different, I think, if Gene and Paul were trying to convince everybody, you know, no, that's Ace and Peter, you know, because I mean, you can tell obviously they look quite different, but so I don't have a huge problem with. How about you, though?
I have no problem at all. You know, it's almost like rooting for a sports team.
Yeah.
If you see some guy wearing the same number as somebody that you like, you gotta stop liking the team. I mean, we're adults. You know, this is like. Come on, it's a band. It's not like, you know, they're solving world problems or something. They're playing music. It's fun. It's you know, people also have to remember that Ace and Peter sold the rights to the makeup. They got their money. They got paid. You know, again, like you said, they're not saying, oh, this is, you know, Ace Frehley lead guitar when Tommy plays. They say, hey, it's Tommy Thayer, you know, the spaceman. He's playing a character. It's you know, no different than a movie when an actor plays, you know, a different actor plays Spider-Man. It's still Spider-Man, you know. Yeah. So I mean, it's like, to me, I don't sweat the small stuff. As far as Tommy Thayer and Eric Singer go, they're fine in my book because
they've kept it going.
You know, the band's happy, right? That's the main thing. You got to be happy in a band. It's really hard to be miserable and be in a band.
Yeah.
Bands over the years have made it work. But it's a lot easier when everybody gets along, and they get along better with these guys. And Peter, I don't know if you saw that video he posted the other day of him playing. He couldn't play those songs every night.
Yeah.
And he's 70-something years old. You know, and Ace isn't as reliable as a player as people want to, you know. People get fascinated with Ace because he's Ace. You know, Ace is the cool guy that everybody wants to be friends, and I love Ace, but, you know, I don't think those guys can play on Tommy and Eric's level at this stage of, you know, everybody's career. I go see Kiss now, and I think they sound absolutely awesome.
And here's the thing. I mean, you look at the track record. I mean, nothing against the Ace songs or the Peter songs. I love those just as much as other songs. But I mean, let's be honest. I mean, Gene and Paul, they wrote most of the hit songs. You know, it's their band. They gave other guys, you know, their place and their time in the band. But like when I hear Peter Criss say stuff about they tricked me into signing my right. No, nobody tricked you. It's not nobody's fault if you're high on something or drunk. You know.
They put the number in front of them and said sign here and you get this check. They were like, okay, you know.
Like that History documentary they released a few months back. You know, people say stuff. Oh well, you know, Ace and Peter weren't it. Well, they didn't want to be. They were making like you know, silly demands that they should get as much money, you know, as Gene and Paul, who've been there since day one, and nothing's going to get to go in the documentary unless they sign off on it. I mean, okay, so they did what they had to do. Okay, well, we'll include them, but we'll use past interviews so we don't have to pay them to do anything new, you know?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, don't forget too that I'm trying to remember. Was it Up to Creatures, they were still making money off Kiss albums. They were still they still had the contract with the corporation, quote unquote, of Kiss. So they weren't in the band. They were still getting money off the albums that Eric Eric Carr was playing on and stuff.
Yeah, and interesting talking about the Elder too. I mean, again, you mentioned this track. This is one of my favorite tracks. I think it's one track on here that really, highlights what Eric Carr was capable of, Escape from Violence, and that's kind of a different track because Kiss at that point had never really, except for maybe on Ace's solo album, the one instrumental track, never really done an instrumental track, but I think that one really stands out.
Yeah, and who knows if that's even Eric playing on that.
Yeah, although he's credited. And now, a world without heroes. That's kind of a different look, a different sound. Because I say that because I got to ask, what was your thought when you saw the music video for A World Without Heroes? Because I mean, they've got their hair cut short. Gene's got his hair short. At the end of the video, you see the demon for the first time. A teardrop comes from his eye. What were you thinking when you saw that?
Oh, that's pretty easy. Why?
Yeah.
Why are you doing this to me?
Yeah.
Ace standing there with an acoustic guitar and Paul Stanley playing the solo. He looks like he's wearing a hefty garbage bag as an outfit. I was like, what am I watching?
See now, I see they used that. They released that as a single from the album, and I can tell you why. Because they thought it was going to be a selling point. The fact that one of the writers on that track happens to be the legendary, rest in peace, Lou Reed. Yeah. And what I will say, the track has kind of grown on me over years, especially when they redid it on Unplugged. I mean, they kind of rocked it up a little more, but I think it's one of those things that is I kind of like it better as time goes on. But initially, it's like this is so different. A Gene ballad, a Gene ballad. What is that?
Yeah, it was definitely like a head scratcher. It's like, what are you guys doing? Come on, man.
Yeah, and talking about the Elder, you can even connect to the first Fraley's Common album because the song Breakout was actually a tune recorded for this that was written by Eric Carr and Ace Frehley, of course, and so that eventually ends up as Breakout on the first Fraley's Common album. And then when they did Revenge and Eric Carr sadly passed away, there's that one tribute track on there, Car Jam, and that's part of a solo he did in the song Breakout, off of, I guess, the original demo track that they demoed, or they had Bruce kind of create a guitar solo that they, dubbed into that track and called it Car Jam. So the Elders kind of lived on, interestingly enough, but I think a lot of unreleased stuff is a lot better. It's like, how did some of this stuff not get released? Like, they got a lot of great unreleased stuff. Like, I got to ask you, because being that we're talking about the Elder and Bob Ezrin produced that, they just released the 45th anniversary deluxe edition of Destroyer, and it's got some great bonus stuff on there. Have you had a chance to hear that, John?
I heard some of it, yeah, not all of it.
Because I'll tell you, the highlight for me, it's remastered and everything, but the highlight for me was the unreleased demos. Like they have unreleased stuff from Gene and Paul. I mean, Gene has this one called Rock and Roll Royce. There's this one Starve. It's really kind of heavy, and they got God of Thunder, a demo. They actually call it something else. It's not in front of me right now, but Rock and Roll and God or something. But it's with the Paul vocal. You could hear Paul do God of Thunder, which is kind of interesting.
Oh yeah, that was definitely something different.
And so I hear they've been toying with the idea of doing something like that for Rock and Roll Over. That just also celebrated its 45th anniversary. But I think Creatures, because after the Elder, I mean, and Creatures actually turns 40 this year, like you said, and I think of all the Eric Carr albums, that was always his favorite album, and you could kind of hear why, because of all the stuff he did with the band. That was probably the heaviest album.
Yeah.
I think Creatures, although it didn't sell well, a lot more Kiss fans like that album than like the Elder.
Well, I think that was the best thing that happened out of the Elder was we got Creatures of the Night.
They had no choice but to kind of get louder and heavier, and it.
Yeah, I mean, like again, I'll say it again. Kidz is at its best when they're heavy.
Yeah.
When they're playing that louder rock style is when they're at their best. And Creatures is pretty much the epitome of that production-wise. It was just so refreshing and so. The problem was the damage, like I had explained, with people's blind fanaticism. Oh, I love the Elder, and that you put out an album like Creatures, and because of the damage that they did with the 3 albums before that, is the result of why it didn't sell. If you think about it, because they had turned so many people off from, if you go up to a live 2, and stop and think about, like, especially the 2 live albums, what they sounded like as a live band, how heavy they were for the time. If you compare them to other bands that were out, before 78, I mean, it's unbelievable. They sounded like Metallica probably back then, And when Metallica, it was like so much heavier than everything else, so much energy. And these 3 albums kind of wiped that crowd out and brought in a new crowd of people that like the lighter side.
Well, like, if you've ever watched any of those History videos, I know you have, you watch some of that stuff, you hear them talking about it, and there's stuff in there about, by the time they got to Dynasty and Unmasked, it was almost like they become a kiddie pop band. Parents were taking their kids, and there were action figures, and people were buying Kiss dolls and stuff like that. And it was not the same crowd, obviously. They were trying to, get a different crowd, or they thought that, that's what they needed to do at that time. And Dynasty is almost, they call it a disco or a Kisco album. It only had, it wasn't really a disco album, just a very different sounding album. I say it's a much better sounding album than The Elder. Unmasked is more of a pop album. Maybe if it wasn't a Kiss album and it was, say, a Paul Stanley solo album, maybe Kiss fans would react more favorably to it. But it was different for a Kiss album. Then they go a little more pop with Unmasked, and then but even getting back to Creatures, it's interesting to find out that do you have any idea who is listed as a co-writer for War Machine?
Oh yeah, Bryan Adams.
Bryan Adams. I mean, you hear that song. That's not. You don't exactly think of Bryan Adams as writing a song like that. But I mean, wow.
Yeah, I can't remember who brought it. It was the guy that writes Bryan Adams. Is it Adam Mitchell?
Adam Mitchell. Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
He was brought in by somebody to write with the band, and he called up Bryan Adams and said, "Hey, I'm writing songs for Kiss. You want to, come and help?"
Yeah. In fact, I think
there was a pretty cool video. It was like a year ago.
Yeah.
There was some guy that was at a Bryan Adams concert, and he was wearing a Kiss shirt, and he was backstage, and Bryan Adams was sitting on like a folding chair with an acoustic guitar, and this guy had his cell phone out. And he started recording it. He goes, "Hey, Brian, look at my shirt." And Bryan Adams started playing War Machine. I was like, "Oh, that's pretty cool."
Yeah, I mean, I would love to see. I mean, I heard as a result of that Eric Carr wrote a song with him called "Cuts Like a Knife." I don't know if he played on the album, but I know he was a writer on that. So that's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
And before we wrap this up, John, the other thing is the myth or the legend of the Elder. And what I mean by that, for years, until they originally re-released this, I forget, it must have been sometime around, sometime in the 90s or something when they came out with the first remasters. I had every Kiss album. My thing was, I got to get this album. It's one album I don't have, but the album for several years was out of print. And I remember when it came out and they finally I'm going to go get that album. And not that I was disappointed, but it didn't live up to all the hype or everything I had heard. This album's been unavailable for years, and then now it's finally coming out. And I thought, it's not a bad album, but it's it didn't quite live up to what I thought it was.
Yeah, it was. I remember at the time it was coming out was right around the time my friend Bob Muldowney, another rest in peace, and I had started our fanzine called called Kick-Ass Monthly.
Yeah.
And, again, this is pre-MTV, pre-cell phones, really old school stuff. We had got a rumor sent to us from, the mill of people that we knew that were involved in stuff that Kiss was actually, and I don't know if this is true or not, because we tried to get it confirmed and we couldn't, but there was talk that they were going to change the makeup and they were going to replace the black with pink.
Wow. Good thing they didn't.
And I remember we called Kiss's management company and they wouldn't give us a comment. They wouldn't deny it. They wouldn't confirm it. So our theory was that they were contemplating it and somehow got talked out of it or just changed their mind. I don't know. I've never heard them even questioned about that, but
yeah.
I don't know. Hopefully it's not true that they were ever even thinking of that, because that really would have been a disaster.
Well, the only thing I could think is maybe that would have been the Vinnie Vincent influence. Yeah.
No comment.
Yeah, there's another guy that kind of talented, a great songwriter. I never understood why on his solo album, because I've heard a lot of his unreleased demos where he sings on them, and he's a pretty good singer. I don't know why he didn't kind of sing his own stuff. He wrote the Peter Criss tune Tears. He's a writer on that, and I've heard a demo of that. He does a pretty cool version, but so sad that he always gets involved, has different people kind of manage him and give him poor business advice. I mean, I don't know who he's to blame, I guess, ultimately, but selling Vinnie Vincent Invasion CDs that came out 30 years ago on his official website for $150 because he autographed it. Come on.
Yeah. I mean, it is sad because he was mainly involved in two of the most pivotal Kiss albums that came out, Lick It Up and Revenge. His songwriting saved
Kiss,
saved Kiss with Lick It Up, because when they took that makeup off, if they didn't deliver a killer album, the band would have been done. And I really think that a lot of those songs have his influence and were his ideas, in other bands. What was that band called? Warrior, I think?
Yeah.
He was in some, and you have those, if you find those demos, those songs that are on Lick It Up, a lot of that stuff is in there, the riffs, even some of the lyrics.
So, even some of his
and then
solo stuff, like Boys Are Gonna Rock.
Sorry, go ahead.
Boys Are Gonna Rock, that was originally going to be a Kiss tune,
Yeah. I mean, he could write, and God, he could play. He was awesome. It's just the problem was he didn't know when to stop playing.
Yeah. In fact, I interviewed Carmine a few times. I've heard you probably heard him talk over years how he'd had a band called Carmine and the Rockers, and Vinny was in the band, and they came very close to kind of cutting a record, and they got to the point where I guess they recorded everything, and since everybody had contributed to songwriting, they had some deal. They shook hands that everybody's going to get a piece of it publishing, and then at the last minute, after signing the deal and everything, Vinny's like, no, Carmine, they're my songs. I don't want to split the publishing, but he's like, but you agreed to it, and he said, I could probably release that stuff, but it's more of I'd have to go through more of a legal hassle than I want to. So the stuff just never gets released, Yeah. And before we wrap it up tonight, John, I want to also let people know of other thing you're currently involved with for the last couple of years is you got, I don't know if you call it a website or Kick-Ass Forever. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. It's an updated with the Times version of what I mentioned before, the Kick-Ass Monthly.
Yeah.
It's called Kick-Ass Forever because it's online, and it'll last forever. I guess.
Yeah, I will post that. I will post our last interview because that's kind of part one to this, and we got a little delayed in doing this because I just got so booked up with interviewing other folks. But that's why I wanted to do this.
You're a rock star, man. I see all the stuff you're doing. That's great.
Well, yeah, I can't believe we got up over 400 interviews that we've done since we launched what we do, and we're just kind of like you. We're just kind of always kind of pumping out these interviews. But so I will post part one of the interview so people can hear a little more about that. But like, you put up reviews and tell a little bit about what people see when they go to the website.
It's a little bit of everything. It covers, everything from hard rock to the heaviest of heavy metal. Everything goes through my ears, so it's like, if I hear something, even if it's not something that I, would listen to or be a fan of, and I think it's relevant and good, I'll post it. It's basically a place where you can find out about bands like Kiss, that you loved for years.
Yeah.
And it's also a place where you can, where you can find bands that if you like Kiss, there are bands on there that you've probably never heard of that if you like that kind of music or any kind, of metal, that, you can find bands that you wouldn't normally, hear about.
Yeah, yeah.
I just get stuff from everywhere, between labels, PR firms, bands themselves. I just had a band yesterday from these guys, from Tel Aviv, wrote to me and said, "Hey, we got this album out. Can you write about us?" And I did. So it's like pretty wild. It's like all this stuff that just comes out of nowhere.
Yeah,
and it's basically kind of like what I've done my whole life. It's like I am a true believer in carrying the torch of heavy metal and hard rock, because and it's just to expose bands that normally don't get exposure, to turn you on to something so you don't have to listen to you've got another thing coming for the millionth time. Maybe you want to hear something different, that's where I come in.
Yeah, in fact, John,
I'm really good at finding these bands and spreading the word about them, I think. Anyway.
Yeah, and I think, John, why it works so well and you're so authentic at what you do is because, like you said, you've been doing it for years. I got to tell people, John's not just a guy I reached out, last week to kind of interview. I've interviewed him several times over years, and I got to tell people, John, I don't know if you remember, but I first hooked up with you, as far as becoming friends online, several years ago, like on MySpace, before there was ever a Facebook page.
Oh, yeah.
A Facebook at all. And it's amazing what MySpace once was. I mean, it's really like a virtual graveyard now. But I mean, and even as far as following you on MySpace, you were really great, like I said at the top of this interview, about promoting your own stuff. And if you can promote your own band like that, think what you can do with other bands that you just really love. I mean, another band I've seen you talk a little bit about since you had the site was, I know you're a little bit of a fan of the band Riot. That's another great kind of metal band that never really kind of got their dues. And I'm always hearing people kind of like you, like saying, that band really should have got more credit. But that's what I love about what you do. You don't just promote what's popular. You promote what you love, the bands that you really get behind.
I appreciate that. It's because me as a fan, I'm always looking for that next band. I'm always looking for that next thing that's gonna, get me excited about still liking music. It's like I can't listen to the same stuff over and over and over. I mean, every once in a while, and like a band like Riot, I was actually, friendly with those guys. My name is on Restless Breed and the Special Thanks because of Kick-Ass Monthly.
How cool is that? Yeah.
We're one of the first bands that started promoting Riot. We were first publications that promoted Riot, and their management found out, and they started calling me. And then eventually, when they switched singers from the late Guy Speranza to now late Rhett Forrester, they were all, they had Rhett call me and stuff. And when the band kind of disbanded in the late 80s, me and Rhett became personal friends, he lived in Queens, I lived in Long Island.
Wow.
So it's like my connection with Riot's deep. I used to pick Rhett up every Friday night and drive to Lemoore East in Queens, and we'd hang out, and just talk about whatever and watch bands. And so it was surreal to me to even say that. And people are like, well, who the heck is that guy? It's like, to me, he was like a rock star, so it was like the coolest thing.
And then,
so it goes way back and it's deep. I saw Metallica before their first album came out. I go on and on about.
I mean, we talked about that in part one of this interview. You were a Metallica fan before the Black Album ever came out. Let's just put it like that. You've been there since the very beginning.
I was a Metallica fan before Kill 'Em All came out.
Exactly. Yeah.
It goes deep. It goes deep, and it's like, I can remember being in high school in 1980 or whatever it was, taking people downstairs in my basement. It sounds kind of creepy, but taking people downstairs in my basement and sit them on a couch and say, okay, this is Angel Witch, this is Tigers and Pantang. Listen to it, and it'd be like, oh my God, what is this stuff, So yeah, I've always had that kind of knack for turning people on to stuff that they've never heard of before. And I'm going to keep doing it as long as I can. So if you want to find new bands to listen to, kickassforever.com is the place to go.
Hey, have you ever, in all your years of like having these fanzines and stuff, you ever encountered a band that like didn't want to do an interview, didn't want you to cover them or anything crazy like that?
Not that I could think of.
Yeah. Reason I ask is sometimes, in doing this all the years I've been doing it, it's amazing that I remember like when Great White kind of split up and Jack Russell was out of the band and that, and they had the two different Great Whites for a while. Like I remember reaching out to the other band and they wanting to know, well, what's your website numbers, because we only do interviews like with major major sites and this and that, and then I get the chance to I reach out to Jack, and he's much more friendlier. His people are nicer, and he told me, hey man, you got no problem. Hey Jack, thanks for talking to me. Oh man, any time, man, you got my number. Anytime you want to interview me, you feel free to reach out to me, man. And just stuff like that. It growing up as a fan of this guy's music, it makes you think, man, what a cool guy. He could have been kind of snobby like the other kind of camp, and so who needs those guys?
No, yeah, you're right. It's like it's so cool. Some people are so genuine, and I remember, I could tell you I know we're getting off track here.
Yeah.
A real quick story is, I don't know if you've ever heard of Dan Reed.
No, I don't think so. Yeah, tell me the story, though. I'd love to hear.
Yeah, the Dan Reed Network.
Oh, okay, yes. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, they were kind of an eclectic kind of band where it kind of sounded like Prince and Eddie Van Halen wrote songs together.
Wow.
It's kind of like funky rock.
Yeah.
Really great stuff. And Dan had it all. He had the big, the record deal and touring the world and stuff, and things happened, and he lost it, and he disappeared for a long time.
Yeah.
And I was a huge fan. And he reappeared in Manhattan out of nowhere after like 15 years.
Wow.
Playing acoustic shows by himself.
Wow.
And I went to see him, and I wound up becoming friends with him, and watching him play these songs on stage by himself. And every once in a while he'd play like an old song, and he would start like, stomping his feet and stuff. And
wow.
I said to him one day, I'm like, you still got that rock star inside of you.
Yeah.
As much as you trying to bury it and sit here and play all this acoustic, stuff, it's still in there.
Yeah,
sure enough, after a few years of me telling him that over and over every time I went to see him, he wound up putting the band back together.
How cool is that? Wow.
And they made, they started playing shows and stuff, and I go to see him at a place in Manhattan. At the end of the show, it was like 2 days after my birthday. Everybody's standing up, and he plays the last song, and he points me out in the back of the room. And he's like, hey, you see that guy back there in the Kiss shirt?
He's a reason I'm here.
The Kiss shirt.
Yeah.
He's like, it's his birthday, happy birthday. He's like, a lot of people don't know it, but he's a big reason this band got back together. And I was like, whoa.
Wow, how cool is that? Yeah.
Moments like that make everything work. Even though you mention his name to people, they don't know him, it makes it so worthwhile. It's just the coolest thing.
Well, see, when you said Dan Reed, I'm not thinking about it, but I remember when you said the Dan Reed Network. Yeah, I've heard that before. But yeah, so well, John, I just wanted, before we wrap it up today, let people know about the Kick-Ass Forever, and you have merchandise, like people want a Kick-Ass Forever T-shirt or something like that. Where's the best place to go for that?
They're on eBay. So
okay.
All people really have to do is you go to the Facebook page for Kick-Ass Forever, and it's like a pinned post, so it's right at the top of the page.
Oh, okay. Well, John Erigo, once again, thanks. Great talking to you. I'm sure we'll do it again. In fact, I can almost bet somewhere later in the year that we'll be talking about 40 years of Creatures of Night. I think that'd be a real fun conversation. So we look forward to that. So. Bye-bye.